I think I'm saying that we struggle all our lives to answer it. That it's the struggle that is important. That's what helps us to define our place in the universe.
This is Beverly, Dr. Beverly, Dr. Beverly Crusher.
Look where we are. Here, all of us, in this moment. So let's do what we spent our entire lives learning to be great at.
And this is Crusher Convo.
And welcome to Crusher Convo. We're crushing the conversation one episode at a time. And tonight we are stuck in a no-win scenario as we discuss the episode that brought back Beverly Crusher after almost 20 years, Star Trek Prodigy's Kobayashi. And I have a very special guest, comic book artist Vernon Smith, joining me. Welcome, Vernon. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited. I reached out on social media and was like, hey, who wants to join for Kobayashi? And you're like, me. Like, I'll do it. So I love that. Before we jump into your Trek journey, I am going to just say real fast. Here is my sponsor, Cherry Tree Incorporated. They have a bunch of amazing items between t-shirts and keyboards and even board cube shaped computers. Go ahead to their website at mycherrytree.com and use my code CrusherCombo6 to get 6% off your order. And you can follow about the socials at Cherry Tree Incorporated. Wanted to throw that in there. So, Vernon, what is your Trek and why?
It really kind of changes from day to day. So I asked my daughter to make me one of these, and we can go through and see what it'll be today. So
I love it. 3.
1, 2, 3. Pick a color.
Blue.
BLUE. And it is, no surprise, Lower Decks.
Lower Decks.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And why? Because it really encompasses all things Trek through all the series, and also selfishly, I'm drawing the Lower Decks comics. So, yeah, I from from episode 1, it just I knew I was in. I was like a little hesitant about a cartoon because the last cartoon we had of Star Trek was a little stumbly, but yeah, I was all in. And then the crossover with Strange New Worlds, and then referencing that later on, like a few seasons later, it's just, I love it.
Those old scientists literally is like top 3 best of all Trek of all times. It was brilliantly done. Now,
Boimler doing the walk in real life.
Oh my gosh. And just even the improv that they were doing, like you said, Riker, as he, went over the horse. And I don't know, it was just comic gold, but it also had, just like Lower Decks, that heart to it.
Yeah.
Right? It was just, it was so good. But that actually brings me to my next question. As you mentioned, you are drawing Lower Decks, so you are a comic book artist. So how did you get into that industry?
I initially did it by just wanting to make my own comics. Like, I'd see creator-owned comics from like the 80s and stuff, one of which was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And those guys, it was like just 2 guys doing it in their apartment. And then it got huge, and I was like, that's what I want to do. And so I tried, and I did not have that same success, but I did love coming up with my own characters, and coming up with stuff that they would do. And so that was really fun. And then years later, I actually got to work on some Ninja Turtles stuff. So it was that's what got me into doing my own stuff. And so it was a nice little full circle, and that was at the same company that does the Star Trek comics. So I luckily met the editor at a fan expo here in New Orleans about 1.5 years ago, and we went back and forth, and I did a Strange New World story in Star Trek 500, And then whenever they were announcing their Lower Decks run, I was like, I went in on that. And
You're like me.
yeah, I emailed her and she was like, we're set for the first 6 issues, but, I'd definitely love to work with you. And then I got on for issues 9 and 10, which are coming out next month. And then they haven't announced which issues it'll be, but I was asked to draw some more after those too. So
nice. That's amazing. You guys are just brilliantly talented. I mean, I have a few comic book covers because it was Beverly Crusher, obviously.
Yeah.
Detail and, just like even the showrunners, you guys enjoy Trek. You love what you do, and it showcases in your art. And so I absolutely love that. We do got a couple people in the chat. So we have Chuck saying hi to Jesse and Vernon, which,
Hi, Chuck.
He is an amazing guy. He just wrote here. He's like, I'm bouncing back and forth between 3 live streams. So he is dedicated. And then there's Wes. This is my favorite episode of Prodigy's first season.
Yeah.
Mine too, Wes. And then also, I let Chuck know you're the man for
he is
for
indeed.
being amazing. But as Wes said, we are about to talk about Kobayashi, which is in season 1 of Prodigy. And so I'm going to start our conversation with a clip.
Sir, that ship is located in Gamma Hydra Section 10.
The neutral zone.
Okay. What's the big deal?
Look, the neutral zone is all that separates the Federation from the Klingons. No one is allowed in.
Entry into which by either side would constitute an act of war.
I'm reading 87 lives, Captain. Shields failing, hull breach imminent. They're running out of time.
Quick show of hands. Does anyone know these people?
Dal. Oh my gosh. So Kobayashi was written by Aaron Wolke, directed by Alan Wan. It first aired on January 6, 2022, and they had a star date for 2366, but they had an unknown star date for 2383. And of course, the 2366 was the flashback scenes for when the Diviner was creating Gwyn. And fun fact, I kind of looked back on that. That would have been from what the star date was. It would have been season 3 of TNG.
Right.
Somewhere between Sarek and Menage a Troy.
Wow.
So as it's creating Gwyn, that's what was happening at that time.
Makes sense.
So I know, right? Just happened to be there. But in 23
Sarek, Spock, sure.
Exactly. Yeah. Now in 2383, of course, this is after Nemesis. Beverly's already on the run, and she has a toddler, Jack, currently at this time as well. I like to kind of mention that when I know the dates. But what was the one thing that you loved about this episode?
Probably all the legacy characters. Though the first thing that I loved before they even showed that when Dahl's playing the game, like the
yes!
the visor game from the episode with Wesley, and I was like, oh, okay, they're going Crusher from the beginning.
Yes, they are. I actually mentioned that in my notes. I was like, the game.
Right.
But I was also like, I put in parentheses and in big caplet danger, because that was not a good thing to have. But I love that they were showcasing the holodeck. I loved the kids' reaction to the holodeck because they had never seen one before.
Right. Yeah.
And
because it reminds you, it's like, oh God, yeah, this is a totally insane creation. If you saw it for the first time, you'd lose your mind.
Exactly. And I loved how they were going through the different programs that we've kind of seen throughout. And of course, they even did Janeway's, holo novels, which Holo Janeway was like a personal favorite of mine. Yeah. I was like, oh my gosh.
Setting out live, like that was awesome.
Yeah. Aaron, God bless this man. He is so good of just bringing that nostalgia in perfect writing, because it's the history, right? Yeah. It made sense to show all that stuff. It made sense for Holo Janeway to mention the holo novels. And it also made sense that in his eyes, it was like, I'm going to showcase all these great characters, and of course, all the ones he picked, besides Crusher, besides Gates, are no longer with us.
Right.
And he was brilliant enough to know which dialogue to mesh into the story. I was all like, because there was one part, and this is later on when he did Scotty. It was Scotty saying, thank you, Captain, and please call me Scotty. I was like, that's from Relics.
Oh, right, yeah.
And then there was something even Spock said that I was like, that's from the episode where he was in TNG. And I was like,
yeah,
absolutely brilliant.
Oh yeah, about like knowing another captain of the Enterprise and stuff. And I was like,
yes. Yeah. Yes, exactly. So I loved how he did that. And then, of course, even going into Gwen's story about, why did her father need this ship and, that kind of dramatics, because Dahl's part was funny and then Gwen's part was serious, but in great fashion. It also showcased what Dahl had to go through.
Yeah.
Was there a moment when they brought out the Enterprise D and they start popping in these characters? What was your kind of like reaction to like, what are they doing? Like this, because
yeah,
when they said Kobayashi Maru, you're like, what's going on?
Right. Yeah. And then they've even got like the graphics on the screen, like how it was in Wrath of Khan on the view screen with like the little gyro thing going around the ship. And I was like, okay. And then they're doing like the voice, listen to Kobayashi Maru. And I was like,
yes,
oh, dude, they're pulling everything out. Okay. We're in the same universe.
Yep.
And like whenever at first when they were like, oh, JT Kirk, and I was like, wait, is Kirk gonna be on here? And I was kind of glad that they didn't have like Kirk or Sulu. As much as I love them, I was like, well, they are captains, so you don't want captains with you on the captain thing. And plus, like, would Hollow Kirk rig the test anyway? So maybe that would be a good person to have. But like when I was, when I was hearing like the voices, and I was like, oh, it sounds kind of, it's like you can tell that it's not live, but I was like, well, these would be made from like historical records of these characters, so it makes sense that it sounds kind of digitized. And I was like, yeah, it worked. It works so well, And then just Odo I was like, nice.
I know, just add a grunt.
Right.
And of course, like Wes said, Gates was the only one that actually recorded new lines. And
which
that was
awesome.
Brilliant. Which was brilliant in Aaron's part, because then that also intertwined that this is happening in real time for Dahl and for Jankum. And I really loved, and I think I wrote it down on here. Yeah. The phenomenon of your stubbornness belongs in a medical textbook. And I believe Gates ad-libbed that. And I was like, brilliant.
Nice.
Because Gates was always so good about even doing certain things. I actually posted on my TikTok about it. The improv, that scene of where Jack from season 3, Jack was dying and, she's trying to resuscitate him. And that's when Picard came in. That was all improv. Yeah. It was scripted. It was like, okay, Jack's dying, go. Like that's, they got to just, that's why I feel like it was so dramatic and such, great in that way. And there's Ed from My Figure Universe. He says, I did enjoy that episode. A great way to incorporate legacy characters. I agree. And Chuck is back saying hi. And of course, Chuck says Jankum Pog equals Jake and Nog. I think too, with Jankum, he was always that funny character.
Yeah.
Okay. But he also made Dahl think for a second, like, well, maybe if you just didn't do this wouldn't happen. That's why Dahl kicked him out, because he was speaking the truth, I think, a little bit too much.
Yeah.
So I kind of wish they had more Scotty.
Yeah. Always.
Oh, always more Scotty. Yeah. Always more Scotty. Now, you had mentioned to me earlier that you've been a Star Trek fan this, your entire life. So what was it about Star Trek that actually drew you in, and did this episode highlight the love of Star Trek that you have?
So my first real memory, my early like toddler memory, I remember having motion picture figures, but I didn't even know what it was. But then in like first grade or something, I saw Wrath of Khan in the theater and just thought it was so cool. And then they were playing the reruns on like network TV of the original series. And, you know, then years later, like when I was like 12 or something, TNG came out. And, but one of the things I really liked, because even back then it was like I was watching all these movies on cable that I probably shouldn't have. And the future always sucked. Like there were cool things that were happening, but it was always like devastated by war, Road Warrior, corporations taking over, Blade Runner, alien invasion,
I was just thinking that, yeah.
You know, viruses wiped it out, evolving apes, like everything. It's like stuff sucks.
Even Star Wars.
Right, yeah. But that's in the past. And and yeah, it was something that was like, this is the best that people are. And it really showed. And it inspired me, like as a kid. Like I remember if I would like hurt myself and I'd be like, that hurt. And I was like, I think Kirk would cry about this. He gets his shirt ripped open and a big gash on his chest. Or, you know, like Spock, like logicking his way through something. I was like, yeah, that's how I want to be. Like, it was like all these different characters that like just influenced who I was. And yeah, this episode definitely did have that, because it had like, you know, characters that influenced me growing up showing up again like 30 years later, which is just super cool.
I love that you said like, Kirk cry about that? No, I mean,
nah,
that's amazing. I was a huge Xena fan, so I'm a 80s baby, 90s kid, and you know, Xena was around the time like between my 10 and when I was 10 to 16, and that was I was all like, she could fight against an army. I could totally go through middle school. You know, that was my mindset. Like, if she could do this, I could do this.
Yep.
She could pull an arrow out of her. I could handle a cat scratch, you know? So
dude, her and Gabrielle, like they could handle anything.
Exactly. You know, they defeated gods. She went to hell, for goodness sake. I'm just like, that's who I want to be. Now, these OG characters were amazing to have. And this is question for you, and even question for people in the chat. What OG characters would you have liked to see?
Oh, like TOS OG?
TOS, anything. Because, you know, we had Odo, we had Uhura, we saw a little bit of Spock and Scotty. And you did kind of mention about Sulu and Kirk, but because they were captains, they no longer applied.
Yeah.
But was there any, and of course I got Beverly Crusher, so I'm stoked, but was there anything else that of any character from any show that you would have liked to see in that simulation?
Probably 7, 9. Like,
I like that answer.
She's definitely a favorite. Like, Janeway's a favorite, but she's always in the show. And Data showed up in Lower Decks, so I'm like, I'm trying to think of like, who did I not get my fix of? T'Pol also. Let's probably like Trip or Malcolm from Enterprise would have been cool, because that would have been like way OG, and like how would they have handled it? Like when there was no Prime Directive when these guys were around, and you know, it'd be nice to see a good holographic representation of them.
It's not like the series finale ending.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Real fast, Wes says, long live Xena, the warrior princess. I agree. Ed also said, I watched Xena for Gabrielle.
Yep.
And Chuck said Garrick. Also, Jake Sisko. And Chekhov.
Yes.
Wes also said Riker or Picard.
Yeah.
And then Chuck also said LaForge.
Oh,
my picks. So people know this about me. I'm not a huge Klingon fan. Okay. So I wasn't really a huge Worf fan. There are a few Klingons that I love. Like I loved Martok. And I did love Kalar. Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah. She was awesome.
One person that stood out to me that I feel like made Worf a better character was Jadzia.
Yeah.
I would have thought that would have been really cool to see her on the bridge.
Yeah.
Phlox, because I'm in the middle of Enterprise right now. I really enjoy Phlox's character. I apparently I have a thing for doctors.
Little Nightingale syndrome there.
I guess so. The one doctor I don't really care for is Bashir, but that's not his fault. That's the writing. And then I also liked Kira. I loved Kira.
Yeah.
I loved her arc. I'm kind of glad you mentioned Seven because I feel like she has the best arc in all of Trek.
Yeah,
but
I would put Spock as probably my favorite, but Seven is definitely second or third, probably. Like her just her run on Voyager, even like before Picard, like her story on Voyager was just like, there were so many times like I would just be like, she's discovering her humanity, she's regaining it. Like, yeah, it's amazing.
Well, when they brought her back, and of course, like at that time, I had just got into. Actually, I don't even think I had gotten into Star Trek yet because this started in 2020. My husband was watching it because he's a Star Trek fan.
Nice.
And he was mentioning like, oh, they brought back these characters. And I'm like, cool. Well, later on when I'm watching it and I had already watched Voyager and then I'm rewatching Picard, I was like, oh my gosh, my mind was blown. I was like, why didn't I care before?
Yeah.
Now Ed says, I admire you being able to watch Enterprise for the first time. I've heard that so much. Anytime I'm all like, hey, I'm watching this for the first time, everyone's like, oh, to go back and have that feeling again. Wait till I get to Discovery. I'm very excited about that.
I loved Enterprise. Enterprise was so cool. I wish they'd been able to do more.
I'm enjoying it. The only thing that I really didn't enjoy was the Xindi story.
Oh, really?
Line. I don't know. I was kind of like dipping and I don't know, maybe it was just because it was kind of all over the place.
Right.
But now that I'm now into season 4, I'm like, okay, here we go. Let's go. And I know this is Manny Koto's season and Barry just did a brilliant, story, but I really enjoyed season 1 and season 2. Like I really loved the stories that they had brought. But I have seen Discovery's episode 1 because it happened to play on Pluto when I was watching TNG and they came on. So I've seen that. So I got to see like, Michelle Yeoh's character. Was it Giorgio?
Giorgio. Yeah.
Yes. And so I got to see her like as the nice captain before it went to the Mirror Universe version for Section 31. Now, Wes says 7 was talked about in my 30 years of Voyager celebration on Twin City Treeks. Check it out. And I was there. I was his I was his special guest for that episode. And he says, I enjoyed the Xindi storyline because it was very Star Trek allegories to 9/11, which I've heard people didn't enjoy that because it was hitting too close to home. Like, at that time, like all of a sudden we had 9/11 and then here's a storyline that's mimicking 9/11 and they're trying to like wanting something to escape the realism. So I've always heard it back and forth. Now, of course, I didn't watch it at that time, so I can't really compare, but I've heard 50-50 when it came to that.
I was positive on it like back then. Like I was like, this makes sense. Like you're addressing it as it happens pretty much like, so it made sense. I liked it. Yeah.
That's a good way of looking at it. Ed says, I love playing Pluto Roulette with Star Trek. Just turn it on and see what episode is there. Close my eyes and see if I can name it. Oh, that's a fun game. I should do that with TNG. I've actually I wanted to kind of do like someone do like a picture game with me with TNG, like show me a screen cap and see if I could tell you what episode it is or at least what season.
Yeah.
Just give me Beverly's hairstyle and I could tell you all. I'll be like, okay, it was this episode right before this happened.
Yeah. I never even noticed that her hair changed so much, but like my daughter, who's 14 now, she got into Star Trek about like 3 years ago. It was like right before Strange New Worlds came out. And so like we did all of TOS. We've watched all of Strange New Worlds as it aired, and we're on like season 5 or 6 of TNG. And it's like she's always like, her hair's different. And and I met Gates at Star Trek Dallas in November and last year, and I brought that up to her, and I was like, and I never even noticed that. And she's like, tells me this story about how it was all these wigs or partial wigs or like extent like that they were just adding to her, and it wasn't until like 5 or 6 that they just let her have her own hair. And we're like, oh yeah, the hair's not changing anymore, and I never even noticed that.
Yeah, it was like season 6, episode 5. I believe it was True Q or Rascals. It was one of those. That was the first time we got to see her hair. But it does change. Like all of a sudden, the hair's bigger, the hair's shorter. In fact, and I loved in season 3 where all of a sudden she has a short bob. And then they went to this episode. Oh shoot, what was it? The Enemy. Where Geordi was stuck on the planet with the Romulan, and Worf could save the Romulan, and he said no. And she has long hair, and that was her actual hair. And I was all, why did they go from a short wig to her long hair? Because she really had long hair. And then the very episode after that, back to the wig. And I went, was she doing like a hollow, like, let me see what I look like with the wig. Here, now I'm going back to short. I have no idea. I was like, did they run out of wigs that day? Like what? I've always been curious, but because the wigs are such a thing, I was like, she probably wouldn't even know, because that was so long ago. But yeah, it goes straight through, and then then you start seeing the '90s hairstyle, the small little bangs and the wig and the feathering of the hair, and I was like, there we go. Yeah, the wigs as a whole. Like I think someone should create like a social media of just her wigs. Right. Ed says Crusher season 3 hair is fire. Wes says, yes, I love Crusher's hairstyle of early season 3. Yeah. I did like those wigs. I did appreciate that. The one that I really hated was the end of 5. Ooh, I didn't like that one. And then Ed says, you have to understand in the 24th century, hair grows fast though through the use of regenerators. Headcanon. Yeah. I'm accepting that as the headcanon now, Ed. But yeah, it was so much. And of course, season 1 was her actual hair. And so the going back and forth, and I believe I heard from somewhere that they wanted to make her older because she was I think at the time they weren't really sure what the age difference was between Patrick the characters. Yeah. So they wanted her to look a little older, but then they felt she looked too matronly. Yeah. Because she was supposed to be 19 years. It was supposed to be Beverly and Picard are 19 years apart. And so they're like, take off the wig. Just throw it away. So yeah, it was like a whole thing. And then if you, like you said, you go through each episode, and it's like different every time.
Sometimes like in an episode, like it comes back from commercial and like her hair's different.
Oh, when you watch Best of Both Worlds, it's hilarious because you see her at the end of part 1 where Riker goes fire. It's the big thing. And her hair is a certain way. And then when they go into part 2 and she's supposed to still be on the bridge, her hair is longer and it's like straight. I'm all,
I didn't even notice that.
Why did they just use the same wig? Like what? Right. I'm like, Michael Westmore, it's fine. I'm not even gonna get into it.
Because back then they're like, yeah, no one's gonna pay attention to this stuff. Like, it's gonna be 3 months later. Like, no one's gonna watch it again. Like, and this is syndicated, so it's not even gonna show in the same order.
Yeah, of course not. And of course, 30 years later, we have all this, and we're reviewing it. I did try to think in Kobayashi. I was all like, okay, what season hair is this?
Nice.
I kind of, it was a little short. I'm thinking a little actually season 7. I think they were kind of going with that look, and that's just me. One other thing though is that this episode of Kobayashi, we kind of went off track here, but going back to the episode, this was the first time that they actually had Beverly Crusher after almost 20 years. The last time they saw her was in Nemesis, and this was Aaron's way of bringing her back, and it was great because I think this kind of paved the way to have her back for season 3 and all of that stuff, and she even did voiceovers and things. With this episode too, though, like we were saying about Gwen and trying to figure out about her father, when you were watching this episode, because this was episode 6, what did you think was happening? Like, were you trying to figure out, like, okay, what is really going on with this ship? Why did the diviner really want this? And, what is Gwen? Because you see her, I guess, being cloned. I don't
Yeah.
know. Cause
or like grown, you know?
yeah.
And it's the main thing I was wondering was like, how could you leave, like, with him leaving his daughter or choosing the ship over his daughter? Like, that's the thing. I was like, wow, this must be, because I was like, I couldn't even imagine, like if
Right.
whatever it was, I would just like be telling the other people, like, all right, screw off. Like, I'm, it's my girl. Like, I don't care about some ship or whatever. But it was like, if this is enough to make him do this, what is going on? And it was weird because it was like I had watched this episode like a few weeks ago, but it was like I just finished the whole show. Like I'm late to Prodigy. Like for no particular reason, I just had like never watched it, and I was like, let me give this a go. And I was like, oh my god, it's so good. and like I was messaging Bonnie Gordon, who's like, does like the voice of the computer and the whale Jillian, and I'm like, I don't want it to end. She's like, it's hard. I'm like, I know, but I don't want it to end.
Like, I know it's over, but don't tell me it's over.
Yeah, and so then like rewatching it, I was like, oh my god, oh yeah, there's all this stuff that hasn't happened yet, and it was just. It was like time traveling, like going back and being, like when you see that in a movie and someone's like, yeah, just text me. It's like, text you? What do you mean? It was like, oh yeah, this is 1986. There's no texting. And that's how I felt with that. But yeah, it definitely was a hook when I first saw it of like, what is going on with this ship? And that, yeah, I was in.
It was a good way of actually showing like what happened to make the diviner so hate outsiders.
Yeah.
In the fact that, I mean, he created Gwen to take over for him just to abandon her the way he did.
Yeah.
And so what I feel made season 2 so special is that we got to see how he was prior to all that.
Yeah.
And he was such a sweet and nice man. It was like, wow, he was so wounded, so destroyed at what happened to his planet.
Yeah.
That it just completely wrecked him to the point to make drastic, horrible decisions, like abandoning his daughter. Like, I have a daughter. She'll be 17 this year.
Yeah.
So I kind of feel you in that sense of like, what a horrible father, right? Yeah. But, because he lost so much, he was willing to just sacrifice anything to bring back that world that he missed. Yeah. So, and I think Prodigy really explored that so well.
But so will that all have gotten wiped out then? Like all this timey-wimey stuff. I'm like, so is the good him just gonna be, I mean, are we allowed to spoil what happens at the end of the...
Oh yeah.
Okay. So like
everyone's good. Yeah.
Yeah. So with the protostar going back, like, is that just all right, it wipes it all out, or are we going like Back to the Future rules on this to where like she's gonna get there and there's gonna be like a truck waiting for her, and it's like, oh, okay.
So I think because it is like timey-wimey, this is very Doctor Who. It's just they were the reason that this all transpired. So it's kind of like this full circle. So because they were a part of it, so they put the ship there, and then their old selves had to find the ship to go and do it to put the ship there, right? Yeah. I think the one thing about that was more timey-wimey and fixing things was bringing Chakotay, because they hadn't like how to bring Chakotay back. That was kind of the mystery. Yeah. So I think it didn't necessarily erase the old version or the diviner version, because Gwen was still alive, because he created her as the diviner, right? Not that very nice old man. But because they were able to kind of switch things around, it was able to keep going the way it was. I think Wesley kind of tried to explain it, but it's like, again, it's very timey-wimey. It's very like, this is how it's supposed to go. That's why he was so specific in like his math. Like he's like, oh, it has to go this way, because if it doesn't, I'm not going to figure out how it goes.
I love that he was in there. It was so, and just everything that happened with him and Beverly and the little baby Jack, like just it was.
Little baby Jack. Did you see my reaction video to Prodigy season 2?
No. Oh, no.
I have a bonus episode. Go look at my YouTube channel. I'm all like, yeah, I freaked out.
Yeah, they
lost my mind.
Ended that show quite well. Like I so wanted more, but I was like, I'm happy with this. Like it's not just kunk, and then wait, what happened now? Like they They brought in the Mars synth thing, like just all of that. Yeah.
And that was a good way, because they weren't sure if they're going to have a season 3. So they're like, okay, so if we end on a high note, but if we do get renewed, we at least know where to go. Yeah. Right. And so wish there was more, but of course they said there's no more, and I'm so upset. But in the chat, Chuck says, I've talked to Bonnie at STLV. She is fantastic. I have not yet met Bonnie. I've been trying to get her on my podcast, but that woman is so busy. Yeah. And one of the things is, though, is that when I was watching Kobayashi and she does the computer, I was like, I wonder how cool it was for her to be naming these characters.
Right.
Because, she was the computer bringing it out. I was like, she was probably like, this is so cool.
Yeah.
And even Wes says, I've wanted Bonnie on my podcast. Bonnie's so great.
She is.
I hear she just seems like amazing. So I'm hoping to see her in STLV and be like, we got to meet. She seems amazing. Of course, she does Trek Talks, and I've had John on my show a couple of times, and what they do there is fantastic. Yeah. Wes says, I'm glad they brought back the Ellen Ripley Janeway in season 2. I totally mentioned that. I did a meme where it was all like showing the two pictures, is like find the difference between the two pictures, and it was like I see the same thing, and it was literally Ellen Ripley and Janeway. I was like, that was like totally her moment. Yeah. Ed says, if you think of time as a Mobius strip, it will make sense. Okay, I never saw that.
Strip is.
Yeah. I never got to see it, but it's so, I know it works. It's one of those red yarn things connecting the dots. And I believe, like I said, Wesley kind of explained it in season 2, but it's so techno-babbly. It's just like timey-wimey stuff, right?
Yeah.
That's just how it works. Now I did have one penny for your thoughts. And so I'm going to do that right now.
Penny for your thoughts.
Penny for your thoughts comes from Chuck, who is in the chat. And Chuck said over on Patreon, Aaron Walke deserves so much credit for this episode and for all the great guest actors' voices he brought in. And I agree. As we were mentioning earlier, it was so fun to hear these characters, especially because I don't think we had lost Nichelle Nichols just yet.
No.
And so that, but she had died, I think, the year later. And then, or actually, no, she died later that year. She died in 2022 because I remember going to Vegas for the first time, and she had just passed away like a month before that. But we did lose, of course, Renee, who was Odo, and then, of course, everyone else on there. But yeah, it was definitely very, very special to hear all of them.
Yeah, James Doohan was like actually the first Star Trek actor I ever met. Like I went to a Star Trek convention when I was in like 3rd grade, and
wow,
and like I got his autograph and like talked to him for like a second, and was like asked some dumb question like, "Did you really hate Harry Mudd?" or like it was something along those lines.
I'm sure he enjoyed that question.
Yeah, I mean that's one thing that I've like noticed with all of these Trek folks is even if they don't, they make you feel like they did. Like nobody's been a jerk. It's been like amazingly
Oh
cool
yeah.
how nice everyone has been.
I feel like, and I don't know if I could, I could speak for me. I don't know if I could speak for you or anybody else, but I feel like all the people that I've met, all the Trek actors at the convention and stuff, they're just so kind.
Yeah.
And so enjoyable and just so full of life and joy. And I feel like because of who they are, it makes Trek that much better.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think because a lot of issues with show running, especially back in the Berman era and all that stuff, and the actors did the best that they could, but they did it with full of life and joy. And that's why I think it was so much, it was great to see, so meeting them, it was always, exciting when I met Gates. And even when I saw her the second time, she left her table and gave me a hug because she knew, I was making my videos and stuff. Like she loves her fans. She appreciates everything, and I see that
came
with
up to
all
my
the
table
other
in
actors.
Dallas and was like, "I love your art," and I'm like, "I love yours," and like she gave me a hug. Like I'm texting my daughter. I'm like, "Crusher just came over and gave me a hug."
What did your daughter say when you told her that?
It's probably just like a squeal, and and like,
I
and I
love
got
that.
her and Spiner like dancing together, and I'd drawn a big poster of everyone, and I depicted them like as Crusher and Data tap dancing. It's like this big thing like in a promenade, and I was like, they're dancing together just like they did on that episode.
Oh, that's so cute. Now my daughter does not care for Trek, but she went with me to Vegas, and
Nice.
I had told her I was like, well, is there anyone you want to meet? And she's like, well, I want an autograph from Data. I was like, cool. And then she's like, and I want a picture with Troy. Got it.
Nice.
So that was her. She's like, I don't watch the show, but I think you're cool. She's like, you're a celebrity. I'll take it. So now Chuck says, I've never talked to Gates. I would love to talk to her. Chuck, you are going to love her when you do. And then Wes said, I would too. She's so great. Like Gates is the best. But now I'm going to get into my tricorder rating.
By tricorder.
I got 2 whole votes over on Patreon. And they both were for 5 medical textbooks. That is how they rated this episode. I also had 4 holo novels, 3 gamma rays, or 1 or 2 mutinies. So how would you rate this episode?
I would go 5 medical textbooks as well. There was nothing that I was like, oh, I wish they'd done that or hadn't done that. Like it was solid, everything. Yeah. The Kobayashi Maru stuff, the Gwendala stuff, like Jane went,
the Spock and Doll, yeah.
Murphy.
I mean, it gets
like those.
Murph, he's fantastic. Wes does say 5 medical textbook times infinity to the infinity power, and of course it gets 5 from me just because it brought Crusher back.
Right.
So I have to go there. But no, it like you said, it was a solid episode. There was really nothing that he left out. It went perfectly together. It flowed well with the story.
The little
they got the game. Like oh my gosh, like he did
right
not
at the beginning. I'm like,
yeah, exactly. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. But speaking of episodes, I'm going to now announce what I'm going to be talking about on June 27th, which is going to be my next episode on here. So let's do the sick bay spinner. I am so excited. I get to talk about the Sons of Picard. So, talking about Bloodlines, which was in season 7 near the end of the series, and where, Jack and it wasn't Jake, what was it? Jason and Jack, very similar. Bloodlines is basically season 3 of Picard.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited to talk about that, especially because I was kind of upset when I was watching TNG for the first time. I was kind of upset that Jason wasn't actually Picard's son. I felt like that was a piece missing in Picard's life. And as he grew as a character, I was like, oh yeah, he didn't like kids. But now I think he would be great if he had one, you know?
Yeah.
And I loved the scenes that he had with Beverly, because he's like, I think I need to talk to a parent. And she was there for him. And then there's also the shift of where Miranda did the same thing with Beverly. But he was like really pissed off at Beverly, but wasn't so pissed off at Miranda. So I'm excited to talk about this episode. I don't have a guest yet, but if you want to be a guest, let me know and we will talk about it. It will be on June 27th, live here at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Hopefully you guys are enjoying the new time, because, you know, my work has just been crazy and it was really hard to get here on time. So, but yeah, I'm very excited about that episode. What did you like Bloodlines at all at the end of TNG?
I'm trying to remember that one.
So Jason Vigo thought it was when the Ferengi was trying to seek revenge again, Damon Bach, on Picard. So he picked this kid. Yes.
Yeah.
And he was like, he's your son and I'm going to seek revenge on you and stuff like that. And
okay, so another one where like Riker had a fake kid, but then that was an alien. Like there's always
a fake kid somewhere.
Up that aren't really, you know, and like Tasha's sister, but then it actually was her sister. Like that was one that threw me. Like
it actually stuck. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's always these random siblings and family members, and it's hard to keep up with them. And Renee Picard,
it's always something.
Yeah, and it's been a few years since I've done and luckily, like, my memory's bad, so there's sometimes when I rewatch and I'm like, oh yeah, I don't remember this episode that much. Even though like, I caught them pretty much all of them when they were broadcasting. Like I would stop what I was doing and make sure like I was up in my room watching Next Gen. Which I could have been like with my parents watching it because they were Trek fans as well. But you know, you're like a little 14-year-old skater punk kid and you're like, yeah, I want to hang out with these people. And now I'm trying to get a little 14-year-old punk kid to like, but she's actually liking them. Like, all right, cool.
I know, it's such a different, unlike my, you know, almost 17-year-old where she's like, Mom and Trek, and I'm just like, hey.
Yeah.
But it got her to Vegas, so she couldn't really complain.
Yeah. I'm glad she's into it too, because I was even like, you know, there's the Orlando Trek show that's like on her birthday weekend. And I was like, would you want to do that as a birthday one year? And she's like, yeah, totally. I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah, she met like Ethan Peck. He was down here in New Orleans for a fan expo a few years ago. She was off with a friend doing something at the show, and a buddy of mine like brought me over. He's like, you got to meet him, blah, blah, blah. And because I'd drawn a poster of like, you know, Spock and Pike, and someone else brought it over and they said that he liked it. So I went and I was talking to him. And he was super cool. And then right as I'm turning around, my daughter's walking up and I was like, dude, I was just hanging out with Spock. And she's like, without me? And I'm like, you want to go talk to him? She's like, yeah. And so like we went back and he was cool to her and stuff too. Like just amazing. So yeah, I'm really glad that she's, because it took years for her to like get into it. She was always like, yeah, Star Trek, whatever. And now she seems to like more than tolerate it, which with a 14-year-old, like I will take that win.
Right. Exactly. My daughter actually had a special moment with Denise Crosby at FanX. Denise had done a dirty joke on stage, and then my daughter did a joke after that, and so we went and told Denise, and Denise thought it was hilarious, and so now they have this bond about dirty jokes. And honestly, I'll take it.
I was hoping that Denise Crosby would be like that, because like I love her. I've never met her before, but I did draw in an issue of Lower Decks someone that looks just like her in the background, and it's kind of a morbid Easter egg because someone else is handing her a little shoe. Like, I don't know if you ever saw Pet Sematary.
Yeah.
And like her kid Gage, like there's a scene with an 18-wheeler and a little shoe that tumbles afterwards.
Yes. Oh no.
And so he's handing her a little shoe, and there's even, and it's like you'd have to zoom in on the screen to see it. There's a little hand reaching up like under the table. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
She'll appreciate it. Don't worry.
And I was like, God, is she gonna like this, or is she gonna be like, what is wrong with you? Get away from my table.
She still loves Pet Sematary. Like, that was like the best time she ever had. So having that kind of an Easter egg, she would totally appreciate it.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're good. I needed to highlight what Ed said here. I'm pretty sure Riker has a few kids around the galaxy. You're not wrong, Ed.
Yeah.
You are not wrong.
And you throw in Thomas Riker, like, so it's exponential. Like, how many is
Rikers everywhere? Yeah. But now let me get into my redhead alert. All right, guys, I am going to be doing, starting July 17th, I'll be doing a live reaction to the new episodes of Strange New World Season 3 on Thursday night. Then I will post a quick react and review for my crushy listeners on my YouTube channel on Saturday morning. I may need to change it up a little bit during my time in Vegas, but I will keep you posted on all my socials. And this is for my Admiral Patreon members. And so I'm really excited for you guys to see my reaction when I'm watching the episode. And then, of course, like I said, for everyone on YouTube, you'll get to see a quick react of the episodes coming out that week. And of course, here are my Patreon shout outs. Go to Chuck, Leslie, and Dave. And as Chuck was in the chat, thank you, Chuck, who are my Commander patrons, and Engineer Mark, who is my Admiral patron. If you would like to support the podcast and enjoy exclusive extra content, just head over to patreon.com/Crusher Combo, and you can sign up for as low as $3 a month. All right. Well, Vernon, thank you so much for joining me tonight. Now, please let my listeners know where they can find you.
I'm on various socials as Vernon Draws, but I pretty much am only good at keeping up on Instagram and Blue Sky.
Same.
Yeah, right. I know it's hard. Met you and also my figure guy. I know we're
my figure Ed. Yep.
Yes, there he is. And yeah, I think that's about it. And I'll be at Vegas in August, as will you, which is awesome.
Yes.
Yep.
Can't wait. Yeah, this is awesome. I'm gonna have a few of like I think, is Chuck going? Chuck might be going. I can't remember. I know Dave is gonna be there. So yeah, I'm going to see a lot of my listeners there. So I'm super, super excited to either meet them or see them again, because I have met them before. But yeah, thank you guys for hanging out with us tonight. Thank you, Ed and Chuck and Wes. Ed says he loves your work.
Thank you. I love yours too.
And he says, apparently, he says, like, I did not follow you, but now I do.
Yeah, well, I think we follow each other on Blue Sky. I just saw the Instagram pop up, and I will definitely do the same. But if not, maybe it was me that followed him, because like I know it's we. I was like, yes, I know that name.
Yeah, you crossed somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I met Ed with like Captain's Quadrant, and we see each other with Larry Nemechek, and we see we're all together. It's just one happy Trek family, right?
Everyone's so awesome with this. Like I love it. Like again, like at the Dallas show, like celebrities, fans, like people running the show, like just everyone has been so cool, and it like made me so happy, because it's like you hate it like when there's stuff that you like and then you just see the real person kicking a puppy or something. It's like, oh, you're not supposed to kick puppies.
No, you're not.
So it's just, yeah, been really cool.
Yeah, no, I totally understand what you mean. But again, thank you to everyone in the chat. Thank you, Vernon, for joining me. Absolutely love this episode. Thank you, Aaron, for bringing back Beverly Crusher. Totally appreciate it. And of course, bringing back Wesley Crusher in season 2. Clearly, you're a Crusher fan, and it was an honor having a conversation with you and talking about the Crushers. But everyone, I will see you in a couple of weeks. We're going to talk about Bloodlines. Live long and prosper. Have a good night. Bye, guys.
Crusher out.